We have our quorum, and I'd like to welcome you all to the September 19th, 2012 Environmental Quality Meeting. Just a quick reminder, this is a public meeting. If you have something you'd like to speak about, please wait till we have it on the agenda, and you're more than welcome to come up and state your name and state your opinion. Moving right along, we have a few things. No, first off though, has anyone read the August 2012 meeting? Can you review them? And then tell me we can put the room in order? No?
I was not there.
Okay, you're excused.
Well, I'm not going to give a vote.
I know.
So
Tried.
Has anyone else read that? No. All
Hold
right.
off till next
We'll
month.
hold off till next month.
Oh,
Yeah.
who's taking? She's taking.
Yes. All right, in our correspondence packets, we have a few items. We have a letter from the U.S. Department of the Interior Fish and Wildlife Service. It's comments on the Bergen Point new pipeline project.
Where is that?
Okay.
South Shore.
No, it should, this is what it looks like, Rich, the letter. It's in your packet. Yeah.
Okay.
The town directly
You
south
don't
of you?
have it? I actually don't. Oh, yeah, you got it? Okay. Okay, they are acknowledging receipt of no effect determination. They have no other concern, all right? Another thing in the packet is a letter from Regina Seltzer, Esquire, Long Island Pine Barren Society. She's talking about a law pertaining to the proposed sale of land by Suffolk County. That document looks like this, everyone.
Can I comment on that for a moment?
Go ahead.
I read it, and I disagree with a great many portions of it, and I think she's very much off base. Just to let you know, at least on the secret portion, basically I guess this group wasted a year and a half on something that apparently does not exist according to Ms. Seltzer. If everybody remembers, we did an EIS on this Yaphank project, and as was proper, we analyzed both the action before us, Legacy Village, and also the alternatives. The county legislature chose the alternative, which was to declare the land's surplus. We did analyze the impacts of a surplus sale, which was proper under seeker, and was properly evaluated EIS, and we also put in the condition that any septic waste that would be generated on the property be contained and flowed into an SGP that exists in the county center, and as such, that's the gold standard. So we did an action-specific EIS as required before the property could be sold. So I very much have to disagree with the legal conclusions that Ms. Seltzer drew. And then there's other stuff.
Okay, I'm
not going to go into it.
I'm going to, go ahead.
Okay. The first paragraph on the second page, she says, within the meaning of the term proposed sale is included, which may have a significant effect on the environment. That's not what secret says. What secret says is 617.3, you quote the section, which may have an adverse significant effect on the environment. She left one word out. Also, in the third paragraph, she talks, proposed sale does not fall within the listed actions in the type 2 list, and so pursuant to 617.6, an action-specific EIS is required. 617.7.4 tells you that an EIS is more likely to be required, and further on it says may be required. So that's anything but it has to be required. Okay, and that's just a quick read of this thing. And what little I know.
Which is quite a lot. I just want to add a few comments from Mike Muley in his notes about this letter from Regina Seltzer. He notes that she incorrectly states that if a project is not a type 2 action, then an EIS must be prepared. She incorrectly states that an EIS on a previously proposed action is insufficient, even though we evaluated a surplus sale under existing zoning as an alternative for Legacy Village. and she asserts that a determination of significance cannot be rendered with no intended use for the property. Our rational basis for doing so was a sale of raw land under existing zoning with no development attached. There are quite a few differences. And just a note, on September 13th, the Suffolk County Legislature voted to sell this property and confirmed our recommendation of type 1 negative declaration. Any other comments on that? All right, we have another correspondence in there from the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. They also provided comments on the Bergen Point outfall replacement line. They have reviewed it, and as it relates to the New York State Historic Preservation Act, they have determined that the project does not pose potential environmental impacts to historic cultural resources on New York State parkland. Another thing we had received from Cornell Cooperative Extensions, actually it was an email that Mike and Larry received regarding the SPDs, the State Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, MS4 permit, that's the stormwater permit. Some requirements, they notified us that public comment opportunity on the new draft SPDs MS4 permit requirements is open. They mentioned the draft retrofit program plan guidance document for pathogen-impaired watershed MS4s on Long Island. That just came out, and that draft is on the DEC's website. If anyone would like to view it, the comment period ends on October 3rd.
Has anyone looked at those regs around here? Okay, I tried to look at them and I started getting lost. Does anyone understand it, what they're trying to do? I mean, because I know you're heavily involved on it.
I understand some of what they're trying to do. I wouldn't profess to be an expert. I'm not certified to be an inspector. They are cranking it up another notch, which I guess in intention is good. Practicality seems not to be weighed heavily in consideration of what they should codify. So.
All right, then that's what I saw. It didn't seem to me, as someone who's experienced in dealing with these systems, didn't seem to me as if it was either workable or maybe the guidelines. It was fuzzy language. I couldn't understand it.
The engineering specs and the proposed or the suggested performance that these devices can do is wonderful. Therefore, do them. You know, wait a minute, time out. There's a little bit more to it than just thou must.
We've heard that siren song before. The technology solves everything.
I don't know what we can do as a body, since it would take us a while to read it, think about a collective voice, and get it in by October 3rd. But I guess individual statements can be made
Definitely individual
on our own
statements.
behalf.
I got to try and read it again. I got lost in it. What it boils down to. I couldn't figure out where they were going.
They are in a new era or phase of the program implementation, which involves a lot more auditing and inspections and fines being levied, and they really are starting to swing a hammer.
So you have seen that then?
Yeah.
It hasn't hit my particular village, so I'm a little inexperienced on that.
Yeah, they've been on the island going after folks, so
All right, that's good.
it's good if it was practical, but
Yeah,
it's tough to
it's good
define
if
what
it-
that is.
Again, the inspections and the fining structure, that I don't have a problem with. It's understanding what they want. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. Historic trust docket.
Morning.
Good morning, Rich.
There's no change in the housing program. We still have full occupancy and all the buildings that we're able to rent, and we're still looking to continue restoration on buildings, bring more into the program, and that's ongoing. The custodial agreements, we're still working on the contract with the Maritime Museum. A lot of back and forth. It's a very complicated one because of the number of structures and activities at that site. So this one's taking longer than usual to work all that out. And today I just wanted to report on a new state initiative called Path Through History. I'm going to pass this around. This is Governor Cuomo's initiative to promote historic sites in New York State as part of his tourism program, and There was a one-day conference in Albany that I attended, and I think they need more sites added for Long Island. There was a committee set up for the Long Island region, but I was not part of that in the beginning. I have been put on it at this point. And the Historic Trust Committee will be giving me suggestions on other historic sites that should be either signed or put on their website. It's a 3-part program. There'll be a website created for all sites across New York State, which a lot of historic museums and cultural sites have wanted to do that for years. You know, that people go on one site and find all these things. So that's in the works. And then it's the sign you're seeing here, the examples. And again, this is a draft at this point, would be put on highways or near the historic site to direct people to them, identify them. And then also, you'll notice like on the Long Island Expressway, there's the large blue attraction signs. I think a lot of ours only have one thing on them and the rest is blank. So this is trying to promote to get more sites. And the state would pay to do this. And so overall, I think it's a great idea. And we, meaning Suffolk County, need to get more of our sites identified on this. Of course, when we discussed it, I mentioned the obvious for us, for me anyway, you have to get the Long Island duck identified on Route 20 on Sunrise Highway.
You got a thing for that duck.
Well, it's very popular, and people don't realize where it is. They just drive out straight, and they're looking for it on Montauk Highway. Many people think it's on Montauk Highway. We've requested before the state put a sign there that kind of put us off, so I think this program could get that done. And of course, our other sites to be identified. But those things weren't yet identified, so that's why I think... Yes?
Make the sign look a little more historic.
Relatable to historic.
The Historic Trust Committee thought the same thing, so I'll bring that forward. This is just what they presented to us.
Because there's text you can use that kind of gives it a, this is so...
Yeah, but you can't see it from the road otherwise.
Yeah, it has to
But
be...
you still have the colors, but you can still have the brightness, but, if you go around anywhere in the world where they have historic signs, there's some relatability to historic structures. This has nothing. It looks like they're just trying to...
It's drive-by stuff.
Right, I'll bring it up. I don't know, a done deal, like this has been in the works, since the spring. I was just brought in a couple weeks ago.
What about that trail along the north
The
shore?
Heritage Trail?
Yes, that.
North Shore Heritage.
That's,
Is it going to be
it's...
part of it? Or?
Well, this is just to identify all these things. So I guess all the things along the Heritage Trail would be on the website so you can
Right.
access it. It's to
And
promote...
then are we going to have these god-awful signs on the... Sorry.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100% because, it looks like they're trying to, put neon signs around the word path. They're trying to identify a particular name that's recognizable, but they could still use, like in Ireland they use a symbolic castle, like a little cut. There's things that they could do that would make this far more.
I'll bring these comments forward. And this, of course, was a kickoff for the state, the conference in Albany. So I'm guessing many people across the state might have similar comments, so maybe they'll respond
probably.
to it.
Yeah, because it's really...
Are they working with any students or anybody to put up an app that just finishes it off and just lets it be?
Oh,
Well, the little code, that you can
Oh, the quick read
scan.
code.
All the above.
Yeah.
This was just like a kickoff for the program, but obviously they did some planning to it, and now they were looking for more input and responses, which I'll give them.
Tell Siri about it and she'll tell everybody about it. So.
Joy?
All you have to-
Did they contact towns?
I don't know. Like Brian Foley is the chair of the Long Island Region Committee. He's the deputy commissioner for the Long Island region. And so I don't know all the contacts they made at this point. But I'll find that out. I haven't been to a meeting yet.
Why didn't they appoint you? That's a logical thing to do.
That was my question, yes. And even some of the signage, like you'll see for the William Floyd estate, they have the, if you look at the bottom one there, I think, Eva, the Battle of Long Island, signed for the William Floyd estate, where of course it took place in Brooklyn. So some real basic history needs to be put in.
Well, also they use the
Part of Long
word,
Island.
they use the word iconic
Yes,
highway
it is.
signage. What, I mean,
Well, that's, you know,
I don't know.
oh,
An icon's an icon.
It's like, what are
Doesn't
they
mean it's a
doing
good
about
icon.
iconic? What's iconic about this? Nothing.
Are you being asked
It's ironic.
just to let them know about county-owned
no,
historic sites?
no, more.
Doesn't matter. It won't-
I'll be definitely bringing forward county-owned sites. Marion Spencer just mentioned we should, of course, suggest the SPLEA sites on Long Island, Society of Preservation, Long Island Antiquities,
Yeah.
and other sites. So the Historic Trust Committee is going to generate additional sites that they think should be identified.
Mary Ann?
And following up on that, the sites that they had on their list were so inadequate that as members of the standing committee, we all just said, well, Richard, we're going to send you ideas, okay? And he said, great. I think the members of the CEQ should do the same. I mean, there are clearly things that all of us can think of in our own backyards. And when they had a list of 20, it was woefully inadequate, and I think we should all send Richard things that we think should at least be on the website. I mean,
Right.
there may
Unlimited.
not be 300 signs on the Long
Right.
Island Expressway. This we understand, but the website should be complete.
It's okay. Very good, very well.
And I can bring them all forward. And that's, you know, I'll definitely do that. And I'll bring forward comments, and I'll just see what they say. I don't,
Is there a website?
not yet. It's still being established.
This is all brand new.
Yeah. It was a
It's very
two-page
exciting.
article in Newsday, if you saw it,
Yeah.
related to this.
Yes.
Oh,
That
is that
was-
where that came from?
Yes,
And I was like, there's nothing on here.
right.
It was like,
Right.
Well, they have the Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory.
But that was from the press conference, that two-page
They have the
article.
Cold Spring Harbor
It was
Laboratory,
10 sites
TNA
used to
Learning
before he
Center,
died.
but they don't have the Cold Spring Harbor Whaling Museum.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's right.
You know.
So as you
There
go
was a
down
lack
that-
of
yeah.
history for the path to
Right.
history.
You know,
They're upstate.
I don't see the
A
armory
lack
here,
of iconic
not the
representation
armory, the
also.
arsenal.
There's very little on that list, Rick. So
Yeah.
I think
Where the signage should be, but we don't want to, a lot. You just want the main sites. And of course, usually with these signage programs, you want to identify sites that are more regular hours open to the public, because you don't want to keep directing people to sites that are closed. But all those sites could be on the website. But like the Big Duck, we have open year round, so you put a big sign up to attract people there, and we have sales there. So, and the same with the St. James General Store, like,
it's
I mean, it's kind of a comment in our program that our two gift shops are the ones that are open year round and staffed.
Well, what
full-time
about
staff.
SeaTuck at the Scully's thing?
Yeah, yeah.
There's just
Yeah,
not enough
that's
signs.
year round.
For example, with the St. James General Store, there's one New York State sign just saying General Store 1 mile ahead. That's it.
Right.
And most people don't even see the sign.
Should be a sign that says molasses lollipops.
The Big Duck was here.
I can't tell you how many people would
Quack,
go
quack.
there.
Some molasses lollipop?
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
Sounds delicious.
It's an 1800
And I
tree.
can't eat them anymore.
If you're just taking up insulin, you'll be fine.
nice.
I see you maybe.
Yeah, I know. I gotta have
The
something.
wrong person
Okay.
to sit and.
Richard, you have anything on the historic trust custodial agreements, any updates?
Just what I said, that
Okay,
we're
nothing
still
else.
working
I
for
can't
it.
see it.
We're all done then? Thank you very much.
Rich, it's called the, Brian chairs, Brian is the chair of the Long Island what?
Region.
Region,
It's
okay.
broken up into different regions.
And this program is called what? Exactly.
Path through history.
Path of History, thank you.
And do you have a phone number?
Right.
Yes, Robert, use the one to call you.
Yeah.
PHRU.
854-0987.
854
That's
0987.
0987.
Okay, we all done with
Soon I
that?
can get in touch with him.
Okay. All right, moving on. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. First project review for under recommended type 1 action is proposed sewer district number 3, Southwest Bergen Point wastewater treatment plant outfall replacements project. I have a letter from Mr. Moulet of the responses to our questions at our July meeting on your presentation for this project. Is someone here to speak in detail about these responses?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having us again. John Donovan, Chief Engineer Sanitation and Public Works. Commissioner Anderson is here, and we have Mary Ann Taylor with CDM Smith. They are
They stopped in mid-word, you have to pick up exactly
All right,
there.
Christine, that's good?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. John, for waiting.
Sure. We were here at the July 12th CEQ meeting and presented the project to you, and I think it generated 6 or 7 questions. So we responded in writing. That's what you have in front of you, the answers to those questions as best we see how to answer them. And we're here to, Mary Ann Taylor is going to go through each question, I guess, if you want, and explain it a little bit more in detail. And I think she has a little short little slide presentation on actual tunnel boring. So I'll turn it over to Mary Ann.
No, I need to get down.
Oh, sure.
Thanks. I put the CD in. Oh, it's, Michael Holmgren.
They're not speaking.
Oh, you're gonna go right to the, you wanna do the video first?
Oh, it's up to you.
Mary Ann,
Yes.
could you please, I had the written responses to our
Yes.
concerns at a July meeting. I did not have it in my packet to read ahead of time. Tom did, and a couple other people did.
Okay.
So I haven't had a chance to look at this yet.
Okay.
Could you just briefly go through the responses
through
to our concerns?
Sure.
For all of us to feel that we're up to
Do this
speed?
first?
Can I
or-
just-
Can I hand it back to you? Yeah, okay. So the CD's in there, so I can look. You know what, let me just get, I'm gonna just get called.
County employee? Yeah, he's a county
Oh,
employee.
shut down and then,
I
sure.
understand
Sometimes
that.
you could do functions.
He's counting.
Oh, yeah. Is it counted? Yeah.
We gotta turn the lights off.
No, I don't think so. Before it was. Let me just go. Okay.
Wild Scenic and Recreational Rivers Program.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's about the best of it.
and now if we have a DVD that we're gonna do first. Do you want to do the DVD first? Mary Ann already put it in there. Oh, the CD, yeah, the CD's in there. It's a good file, so that's a good second story.
Mary Ann, while we're waiting, I have one simple question, I hope. With regard to the material that will be excavated, in
Yes.
some other tunneling projects, I understood that the approach they were using actually generates a bit more of like a slurry,
It is.
gooey,
Right.
that might have a use, but not typically for like nourishment or something like that. Does this technology generate that same?
It is a slurry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
And
they
it kind of
do-
stays gooey apparently, or it doesn't go back to a state that we could just sort of spread it for replenishment.
replenishment.
Yeah.
That's, thank you. I'll jump right ahead. That,
Well,
yeah,
okay,
we
if
are
you're gonna get that later, I just didn't see it written
It is
out,
the
so.
first issue, so you're right. After our July meeting, Michael had sent me a list of these 6 issues that he needed further information on. So in some cases, we still don't have a concrete answer based on the development, the stage of this design. But we worked with the designers and the regulators and DPW to kind of flesh it out some more and at least give you some more information, and it helps to guide the design actually as we are moving forward. So we'll share with you what you know. And in some cases, we have a little bit more information than was actually presented here. So the first one was the disposal options, just as you said. And we've been working with the guys, DPW, their dredging guys, you know, how they usually have to proceed in order to get permitted and what they do with the materials, and also with DEC. And the short answer is most of the material that we are going to be removing is not really going to be appropriate for beach nourishment. The reason being, they told me they're looking for 90%, well, less than 10% fines. And if you look at this tunnel alignment through here, it's mostly these tans and the dark browns. This stuff is more clay. This is more silty clay. It has some fine sand mixed in. This is more clay with some silts and some sands. This yellow is sandier. But when I go through those books and I look at the grain size distribution, I still in most cases don't have that 90%, you know, clean sand is what they're looking for beach nourishment. So your question before about it's coming out as a slurry. As they put the TBM down, as they launch it, they're going to use a conditioner for the clays that's kind of like an aerosol to keep it from getting sticky and gumming up that cutting head. And then when they get to the sands, they may switch it and turn it to more like a bentonite kind of thing so that it reduces the abrasiveness. And then they take it out and they do have to treat it. They do remove a lot of it because they want to recirculate those chemicals, you know, that processed water. They don't just keep using water over and over. They kind of use as much of the same process stuff. But it is rather mucky. Now, talking to the state, I mean, their thing is, well, why wouldn't you use it for landfill cover material? Like, that was the beneficial reuse that they thought would be most appropriate. We don't have a lot of landfills here. And talking to our tunneling guys, they've never really had an owner who wanted to keep the material. Usually the owners just want to get the material off-site and as cost-effectively as possible. So the approach that we were thinking of utilizing here is to get those requirements from DEC. They're working on exactly what the requirements would be for material that could be used for beach nourishment. Anything additional beyond that 90% coarse material, you know, less than 10% fines. Put that into the specifications, and then if material comes out that is suitable, then that could be used for beach nourishment. If there's no suitable material, then it would go off and become the contractors. And that, like the goal of the project was to develop a tunneling approach that could safely and cost-effectively be implemented as quickly as possible. And I use the word like safe broadly, not beyond the health and safety of the workers in the community, but to the environment as well. And so we're trying to keep those costs within that $200 million cap, that $196 million cap. We don't want to have to use a material recovery program. Like, that's not the goal of it. So at any rate, that's where we are right now with that whole process. So we're continuing to work with the state, and as we get closer with the county to see what the opportunities are where they could use, you know, this many yards of material, and you know, work with the state to see what the requirements are, put that information into the specifications, and then as the material comes out, if it does comply with those specifications, we can move forward.
I would recommend you touch base with the dredge material group in the city. They have a lot of plans, and
You mean the Army Corps guys?
yeah, plus the others, the Port Authority and the vendors, because some of their plans and vendors' ideas actually need volume, and this would be some of the material, organic material that they might benefit from.
Okay.
So, not that they have a waiting yard for you to drop it, but
Right.
in time it might fit their plan.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be pretty hard to transport overnight. You have a couple of handles.
Well, they're drawing for that places.
All right. The next was the storm surge potential and how to prevent that. And so we went and pulled the sea lake and overland surge from hurricane model results and overlaid them on our study area. And from Category 1 to Category 4 hurricane, we're looking anywhere from maybe like a 5-foot surge to over 20 feet surge of the area. So it's pretty significant. And the contractor's approach would differ depending on exactly what he was constructing. So if he was working on the shaft right on the site, what he would probably do, the good thing about these hurricanes is that they're forecast ahead of time, so you do have some time to prepare. He'd pull his materials off-site, he'd pull his people off-site, move it to higher ground, and once the storm was over, he'd just go and pump it out, and the pumped out water would be directed to the head end of the plant and treated and out. And so it would be that simple, really. He has a few decision points along the way. As he's doing the shaft, he could choose to shotcrete it at the end of each day, or he could do it at the end of the week. If he heard a storm was coming, he would probably try to reinforce that as much as possible. But it really wouldn't affect the ground freezing at all. You know, just a couple of days being underwater, and it wouldn't affect really the construction of that shaft. Yes.
You're going to have pumps on, or the contractor would have pumps on the site anyway. I mean, you're
Right.
dealing with basically a water environment. You're going to have seepage no matter what you do, even with freezing.
Right.
So the guy's going to have pipes, and
Pumps,
pumps and
yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
But pump, then you have a pipe attached to it.
Yes.
He's going to have that on there. So you know, it's not something, means and methods is really up to the contractor.
Right.
And as long as he has that equipment there, I don't see a
Right.
problem with it.
Right.
But they'll be unmanned.
Yeah, they'll be unmanned, but frankly, it's recovering afterwards.
Right. Now, once you get to the tunnel part, he's going to pull as much of the materials that can't be inundated as possible. He would he's going to leave the TBM in place. He's not going to pull that out. But he would have either ahead of time a bulkhead kind of
Cofferdam?
something like that built, or he would do it when the hurricane was forecast, and he would disconnect all the electrical and all that power stuff, disconnect all the cords, and he'd seal off that TBM. Again, when the storm was over and it was safe to go back, he would just pump it all out and send it up to the plant. If it happened during exit shaft construction, it would be a similar approach, except the discharge of the water would have to be a condition in the tidal wetlands permit. That was the recommendation from DEC. I don't know if it would require any treatment. It would probably be very silty, or have a lot of solids in it, but that should be all that the water would have in it. So it's really not going to affect the tunnel construction project at all. It's just going to be, he has to respond to it, but it's not going to destroy the tunnel or the equipment or anything like that, because you have time to plan for it, basically. Yes?
Reminds me, the scope of the project is solely the tunnel replacement, because I thought the question also included planning for these storms or sea level rise.
Sea level rise is another issue. You're right.
Okay.
Yep, we addressed that one separately.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you. Okay, this was the characteristics of the maximum extent of the staging areas. This was a good question. It forced us to kind of go back and size this staging area a little bit more carefully, and we went out in the field. We spoke to the New York Office of Parks and Historic Recreation and Historic Preservation to see what their requirements would be. They need a registered landscape architect to do the revegetation plan. So we went out with a landscape architect and kind of did a little site survey. And the designers also thought a little bit more carefully about how much of this area they actually needed and what they'd be doing with it. Turns out that we're moving the shaft back further, this exit shaft further north than what we presented to you in July. The reason being that we have to connect up to the existing outfall pipe that goes through here. And we're going to need this pretty large area. This is about 300 feet back here. This is about 451 feet back here, and this is the 300-foot easement. What they're going to do is open up here, do a bypass, and then they can remove this pipe and connect in here and out. So that's why we have to set this further back, so that there's enough room to put the line stops in and the bypass.
Would it also be that you want to get a little bit drier land over there by pulling it to the north for the connection?
That's a benefit, but it was more just a matter of logistics, I think. But that is a benefit, Mike. Thank you. That's a benefit. So this is the easement. This line is the federal wetlands boundary, and this line is the state wetlands boundary. And it was kind of interesting when we went out in the field to see what the apparent differences were. Actually, I'll just show you the pictures. When I went out with the landscape architect, and it was very interesting as you walked along here by the roadway. you could actually see where this easement was disturbed. There was all like bayberry, and then here, it was more of that olive tree with the pretty silver leaves, but the disturbance was still readily apparent. So we took a batch of pictures, sorry. This is about where you enter the site, the easement, and then we took some more pictures from the north side because you couldn't see very far. And this reference point, this is a telephone pole, and it's just kind of our reference point in some of the pictures to kind of orient you a little bit, so that's why it's circled. I think I should stay on this side. When you walk in from the road, from the parkway there, that's pretty much what you see. It's just, right now, it's all overgrown vegetation right in front of you. So there were some native plants there, but it was primarily the invasives. It was primarily the olives. There was a lot of Phragmites even in the roadside part. But there was some native plants there.
Well, according to what you're telling us, you're going to knock out the invasives in there, which is no great loss, and you're going to be putting in basically replanting to some degree.
Right, and who knows if it's going to take or if the invasives are going to be back, but that's the plan.
Frags will never leave.
If you look at it from from vantage point 2, which was from the marina, and you look back, here's our telephone pole, right? This tall stuff, which is hard to see, hopefully your pictures it's a little bit clearer, is all the Phragmites. All the tall stuff, it was kind of like brownish tinged, it was like blooming at the time that we were out in July. And then there was just like a little fringe in the front of the Spartina. And if you go out a little bit further, it's a little bit more clear. You can kind of see where that height difference is. That's the line of demarcation. And that's a little bit.
For whatever it's worth, Larry and I both have major problems with Phragmites, and whenever it can be eliminated, we like to see it eliminated.
Yeah, well.
He's had a lot of studies done on it, and we've managed Stony Brook Harbor and Discord River, whatever we can to knock off the Phragmites. So if you can eliminate them, that's a good thing.
Well, it's going to be to the east and the west of us, so who knows? But right. Now the Office of Parks also went out and they did a preliminary survey of what they would want to see in the revegetation plan. Again, when they went out, they couldn't access the site too much because it was so overgrown. But this is their preliminary list of the plant materials that they want to see. It's not necessarily complete because they wanted to go back again when it was a little bit more accessible and possibly add some more. But this is a list, and we'd also have to work with DEC on the same thing together. But that would be the collaboration, and this is kind of like the starting point.
Nick, we've seen pretty good success with those kind of replantings, right? So this is not really a risky.
Finding them is the hard part, commercially available.
Really?
Beach plums? Well, sorry.
Well, let's see that on here.
No, the commercial nurseries don't carry this kind of stuff.
The tuck for the
Red
bulb
cherry?
Baccharis, I really haven't seen that, but yeah, these are all adapted for this environment, so they make perfect sense for recommendation for planting here.
Beach plums.
It's keeping that Phragmites from
Beach plums were
recolonizing.
there, yep. They were there.
That's
It
the hard
wasn't
part.
on the list that the Parks Department gave us, but they may add it.
Typically, DEC will require, you probably have experience with this, a certain survivorship over 3 years, and so they have to keep coming in and ripping out that frag that's going to want to recolonize.
But that's where we stand on that at this point in time. What's that? The next one is the sea level rise. So the sea level rise projections, as you probably know, are all over the place, depending on whose models you look at and whether they do the rapid ice melt or anything else. So it could be anywhere from a foot to almost 6 feet when you look to 2080, 2090, and I think you asked us to look out for a century. I only found one document that really pointed to a century, and they said 3 feet. But at any rate, if you look in that 2 to 6 to 7 to 8 foot range, what the tunnel guys tell me is that a 10-foot increase in head, from sea level, would be about 5 pounds per square inch of additional pressure that would be distributed around the liner system, and that's going to be included. They'll consider that as they're doing the design. I mean, that's just a small amount of the pressure. So it's going to have no impact on the tunnel itself. Where it will have a little impact, and I'm going to turn to you, John, for some more information on this, is right now the effluent pump station flows by gravity a good amount of the time. Depending on tides, right, and depending on the flows and all that. As time goes on and sea level rises, and also because some of the changes that are being made at the plants, particularly the UV system, is going to cause a higher head, they're going to just have to be pumping more often. So as they're doing the effluent pump station, they're adding, the pumps have that range that's going to be required. So that's going to be the primary difference in how the outfall operates. So it'll be operating under pressure more often.
Question on how much more do you think the pumps will be operating? Because right now, as you were just saying, it is mostly a gravity feed there, and especially at low tide. It's a lot easier. You don't have essentially, as you were saying, the pressure on there. How much do you anticipate in terms of active force mating, essentially?
As a result of the UV system?
No, as a result overall of what's going to be going on.
Yeah, it's hard to predict, like Mary Ann said. We very rarely pump. We only pump when it's high tides and storm situations. But even when we pump at low pressures. Percentage-wise, I don't know how many times. I would say it's probably less than 10% of the year we pump. With this new tunnel and the increases of the water level and the head that we have to pump against, it probably would go up a little. How much, I really can't predict.
What is the depth of the pipe right now at the outfall, which I think goes out 3 miles, if I'm not mistaken? What is the depth?
It goes out after Barrier Beach. It goes another 3 miles.
Okay. What is the depth over there at the dispersal point?
It is
50 feet. It's probably deeper than that.
No, it's buried, and then it has the fuses coming up. So the buried pipe, I don't think it's more than 10 feet.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it in terms of.
No, the buried. You talking about the buried depth or the depth to top of water?
You were talking, Mary Ann was talking a moment ago about if sea level rise occurred, okay, there'd be some additional hydrostatic pressure on there, on the pipe itself. So let's say 3 feet would add 5 pounds, I think you just said.
10 feet.
10 feet, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out, in terms of a comparison, how deep the diffuser is right now. If it's buried inside the sand, what is the, if you were to take a sonar sounder, 50 feet, 100 feet, how far down? It's minuscule is what.
Yeah, I don't know the exact depth it is out there, but
you don't see problems with it.
Don't see a problem. The pumps can handle it. Right now, the pumps that we have can pump up to 100 pounds of pressure, and we never got more than 25 pounds. With a very strong storm and a high tide condition, the max we've ever pumped is like 25 to 30. So, and which is luckily is what's saving us with this pipe.
Yeah, because the pipe right now is falling apart and can't handle the pressure.
Yeah, once it gets to 70 or 80, they've been having problems.
What's the design spec on the new pipe in terms of pressure load, in terms of the pressure that it can take?
I don't know what max pressure it can take, but it will be designed for,
Yeah, they're looking actually, that would be defined by the surge pressure, I think. And I want to say that was an order of somewhere between 150 and 200. I don't remember if it was 180 or,
You got several, if my math is correct. It's less than an order of magnitude, but it's considerably more than you pump right now. So that would be good.
And the pumps that we have right now were designed to pump 180 million gallons per day. The plant was designed for 30. It was planned when it was designed to be able to expand to 60 million gallons a day, which, we've seen 90, 100 million gallons a day with storms.
Yeah, that's with the storm surge.
And that's when we're pumping. And even then, we're pumping at, low head. So.
Thank you.
I just had a question about decibel with the pump. I mean, I don't know how much it's going to impact, but the level of decibels, if
the
there's...
noise in the effluent pump
the noise
station?
level.
Since our building.
But no, I mean during construction, I'm talking about during construction process.
Oh, the construction process bigger.
For the tunnel, you mean?
Yeah, for all that's the noise element.
Nobody lives there.
I think the you're going to have the equipment, I forget, you're going to have any of the construction vehicles, the trucks going in and out. You're gonna have the generators for the ground freezing.
Yeah, the generators is what I was thinking of, actually. I don't know
Yeah.
how,
Yeah, but
it may not be much, you
those
know.
are usually brought in, for example, H.O. Penn has giant generators, I forget how many kilowatts on them. But they're very, very large, and they're on the back of a flatbed, and they have mufflers and everything. Yes, they are loud, but it's not as if it's gonna drive people out of their houses.
Right.
There's no houses there.
All right,
I
well,
mean, that's the kind of
sound
equipment
travels,
all
that,
that.
you know.
And they do have sound protection.
Okay.
That generator with like
Okay.
special enclosures around it.
All right,
Yeah, I think that would have to be required, maybe.
okay.
Because of sound protection.
Thank you for answering.
And this one, I think this is where we're gonna jump into that little.
Oh, okay.
Can we do that? I'll just. Minimize this, right? 'Cause it's weird. So what we thought we'd do is, I'm sorry.
I think it'll just go.
It will just go?
I think so.
All right. I thought what we'd do is just show a little video to explain, like, I think there was some concern about maybe the tunnel collapsing before the shields were put up, right? Before the liner was put up. And it all kind of happens within the length of the tunnel boring machine itself. So I thought maybe if we showed this, it would clarify some of what's going on here. This is from the EDC website. This is from the Siphon project that's going on right now in Brooklyn to Staten Island. And so you can kind of see the cutter head is going and kind of, I'll describe it.
They got a pressure bulkhead up there, and they grout as they go along.
Yep, exactly.
What's the size of that, remind me?
This one is about the same size as ours. It might be 12 feet. And we're thinking we're going to have a 10 to 12 feet as well. So,
They shotcrete. What they do basically is the thing advances, they shotcrete behind it. That's like a gunite, fast-drying cement, and it will withstand pressure. And I think it's within the pressure chamber. As the thing advances, you literally spin around, and the guns go, and they put the concrete around there.
this is just taking the muck off that you asked about. This is just transports the muck back, and then they have the low carts that bring it up to the working shaft, and then it goes up and out.
Sometimes they lay
But it's,
segments.
Yeah, well, that's a different way. I mean, you can do it like the Holland Tunnel.
They're laying segments,
Yeah.
right there.
Sometimes they put steel and they just ram it forward. Sometimes they'll build a trench and drop a section in there.
here's a little concrete segment.
There's a million
This is
different
the
ways to do it.
segments, and that liner segment goes in right within the protection of the shield from the tunnel boring machine. So nothing is ever exposed to the ground, you know what I'm saying? Except that front end of the tunnel boring machine. And there's like eight to a dozen guys who are actually working right inside this. So it has to all be protected all the time, and it's pressurized, you know, so that atmospheric pressure so they can breathe. But the segments come right in and are kind of put in place by the machine itself. So it's not, I mean, people help it. There'll be guys that are kind of guiding it to make sure that everything is going smoothly.
Are these going to be segments, or are they going to shotcrete?
It's fairly long.
Well, it's going to be segments, and then it's going to be a liner, and that's what they're going to be designing. But then it's also grouted in behind that. So it's kind of like a combination.
It's almost like where that green is, you see up top, essentially, the shotcrete will go on the outside of the actual line.
Yeah, that's the grouting aspect.
Right.
That makes it
And
watertight.
They'll show you that in a second. So there's the little gaskets, and the guys will be putting in the bolts and the dowels to kind of secure it.
That's metal or concrete?
The what? The
The
liner?
section we're looking at right
The
now.
liner's going to be, it's more concrete, yeah.
That's the precast section we see, they go in about 5-foot sections, so once it does one section, it advances.
And I have some more pictures from the Brooklyn site too, but
Are the segments fabricated on site or they're fabricated off site?
the segments also,
Off site.
yeah.
I'm sorry, I
So they're
missed,
transported.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I missed something. This is the stuff they're doing in the water tunnel right now?
Yep.
Water
The
three,
second,
okay.
yep.
water transport.
Yeah, it's gonna be flat beds, you can't do anything about it, but, you know, the roads can handle it.
And then it kind of jacks off this and advances further. And that's, so this would really have these segments, if it wasn't a cutaway, stretching all the way back. But that, I thought maybe that would answer some of the questions if you could see it as opposed to my talking about it.
So this is accepted technology, is what you're saying. I was in Water Tunnel 3 a long time ago, and they were doing the same kind of thing, and this is the technology that they use. So it's nothing unusual that we're doing here.
No. If you went home and you just Googled TBM videos, a batch from the Discovery Channel and stuff come up, there's tons really from Europe. And there's little buttons that you can click and they talk about it in English and explain it all, like it translates for you. It's pretty cool. But yeah, some of these tunneling guys have, this one I think was done, we're working with Hatchmont McDonald on this siphon project, and this is one of theirs. But it kind of just explains the process a little bit. So I don't know if that makes anybody feel any better that the soil's not going to be collapsing behind the tunnel boring machine or anything like that. It's all kind of supported that way. And that's it. Thanks. In terms of settling and how it affects the joints and things, I think that was some other questions that were raised. Really, that's a matter of doing a really robust design, making sure all the calculations are checked, making sure that everything is inspected, you know, at the factory, in the field, as it's being installed. Talking to our tunneling guys, the only thing that they could think of that would cause this tunnel to shear or to start coming apart would be an earthquake, like a direct hit from an earthquake. And aside from that, as long as everything is conservatively and properly designed and monitored as it's being implemented, there shouldn't be any problems. They spent a long time talking about the advances in the instrumentation and controls from the tunnel boring machines and how you can track that in 3 dimensions every second, and if there's any deviation from that alignment, then you would make an immediate correction. So you wouldn't be getting out of alignment, which
There's
would
no
cause. I'm sorry?
There's no wobble.
Right. So then everything should line up properly and everything could be connected up properly and sealed off. I'm not saying it wouldn't leak, you know, because there is allowable leakage just as there is in sewers. You know, there's most of this alignment is going to be in that clay, so there's not going to be a lot going on anyway. But yes.
Number one, all the things you spoke about in the presentation
Yes.
that are contingencies, so to speak, they would not, and this I'm asking as a question,
Okay.
not rhetorical, would they or would they not increase the cost of this project in the end?
Okay. Which contingencies are you?
Well, when you first started,
Okay.
the PowerPoint for that
Yes.
presentation, you talked about getting rid of the material,
Right.
how it could be used, where it might go, where it might not go. I mean, that's just one aspect of it.
Right.
The other question is, you talked about the flora that's in the area.
Yes.
Okay, you didn't talk about the animal life, the fauna, that might or might not be displaced in the area that is your staging area.
Right.
And whether or not it's expected that at the end of the project, this animal life will re-inhabit the site, or will they be lost forever?
Okay.
Or we don't know. I mean, you gave us a list of plants that are there now,
Right.
a list of plants that the state DEC wants to see planted, okay, at the end of the project, but you didn't tell us, are there rats running around there? Are there
Okay.
You wanna keep the
raccoons? Are
rats?
there possum? Are there, you know,
Fox.
and this gentleman over here talked
Turkeys,
about
wild turkeys.
what hawks,
Hawks.
Harrier hawks might inhabit the site. Are there nests there? You know, has anybody gone out and really confirmed any of this? And what's going to happen, you know?
Okay, we'll take
They'll
one.
displace.
We'll take one question at a time. Shortly after we were working on the preliminary design, we met with DPW and a whole bunch of people, and we put together a list of all these different kinds of issues, and they included many of them that we're speaking about right now, and how it would affect the project, and how we would address it, what stage of the project it would be addressed, and who would be responsible for it, and all that. So a lot of the items that and what the cost implications of not addressing it could be. Anything that has a significant cost or schedule or implementability, risk associated with it is something that's going to be addressed early on. Things like the tying down the ultimate uses of the material was one of the things that was identified with the risk associated with it, and that's why we're going to kind of continue to work through with the regulators as we move forward. We're not anticipating that it's going to have a huge cost impact. If you were to put restrictions on it and say we wanted it all to be made suitable for this application or this purpose, and it became like a materials recovery project, that would add a lot of cost to it. So if you put some additional restrictions on, then it can add cost. It depends what. I know I sound like I'm being evasive. I don't mean to be, but it's kind of specific to each of the issues. There's no real additional cost responding to sea level rise. There's no additional costs that would be associated with the hurricane protection and the surge protection. I mean, those things are all risks that the contractor knows that he has to be responsible to respond to. Okay? Does that answer your question?
Well, I can still see the, you know, as you start to approach the project at some point in time, things coming up and...
Right, and there's
you know,
contingencies
and there's all
that
kinds of
are included.
contingencies. I'm just picking out a couple of things
Right.
that you brought up and that you mentioned. There may be other things that...
Oh,
I'm not
there
an
are
engineer.
issues.
What I'm saying is, I'm not an engineer, okay?
Right.
And I can only, having worked for government for over 30 years, I've seen any number of projects that start out as one thing
Right.
and end up being 6 different things.
Okay.
Project Creek.
Beg your pardon?
Project Creek.
Project Creek. And I'm just asking, you know, are there contingencies in there
Yes.
that are going to,
Oh.
you know, raise the price of this project? So instead of $200 million, which I think is
Mind-boggling.
mind-boggling,
Yes.
it becomes $300 million.
Rich.
Well, I think
And that's
there's...
scary.
Rich, that's not really the point, though. The cost one is outside of our control, et cetera. We're really looking...
Oh, no, I understand that, Michael. You don't have to explain that to me. But we have something to say about it now at the beginning.
Yeah, but under seeker, and we're
Okay.
looking at the description of the
I
project.
understand that, Michael. I'm just saying, we have something to say about it at the beginning where we may be able to influence what happens later on with secret, okay? And that's all I'm
Right.
trying to say.
We do have a contingency allowance, at the early stage of a cost estimate, you put a huge contingency on there because there are so many unknowns that are not yet defined. Each stage of the project, you know more and more and more, and the uncertainties drop out, and that contingency allowance gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Do you know what I'm saying?
From your mouth to God's ear. So I believe what you're saying.
Well, I guess in an ideal world, that's
Yeah.
the way it works. That's the way
I-
that we do
okay,
public works
all right.
projects.
All right.
You know, so we do have a contingency, a percentage, and I don't remember what the percentage is.
I mean, generally,
Here.
when you go into a project, from a construction standpoint, in the beginning design, you have a higher contingency percentage. As you get closer and closer to the final product, that contingency, in
Gets
theory,
smaller and
should get
smaller. I
smaller and
understand.
smaller.
I understand.
Yeah.
But it's
And I
not-
appreciate what you're saying and your comments on it, it's just,
Okay,
we have,
30%.
I guess, hopefully, we are considering that. And hopefully, by the time we get to the final stage, there should be no surprises. Yeah, I agree with you, there's always something that pops up.
Well, following up on.
And my other question was, you know, has a biologist gone out there and identified, you know, nests and animals that might be using those nests and that will be displaced by these activities?
All right, I'm gonna look and see what was found on the site. I'll tell you, from going out on the site personally, remember when the police were going out and they were searching for bodies?
Oh, yeah.
And I never understood when they said, oh, we couldn't get through. I'm like, what are you talking about? Until you go out there, and you're just surrounded by vegetation that's up over your head.
Yet
And
the
you-
deer bound through it.
Yes,
as if
they
there's
do, right?
nothing wrong.
You gotta grow horns.
They do.
I don't get how they do either, but
Yeah, but they don't mind the ticks and they don't mind the poison ivy.
it's beautiful.
Based on what was available from, just resources and references, common songbirds, deer, mosquitoes, ticks, and shorebirds.
All right, we try and kill the mosquitoes whenever we can. The ticks we don't like either.
I mean, but did we go out and look and see if there were nests? No. When I was out there personally, all I saw were, birds flying around, but I didn't see anything running around.
If it's
I didn't
not
see
least-
They're not
animals.
sessile.
If it's not least terns and things like that, generally those kinds of populations have a tendency to disperse
Yeah, they
and
do.
displace
Right.
and then come back when it comes back.
Yeah.
If it's a specific habitat for them, for example, plovers and terns,
Right.
etc., then you've got a problem.
this isn't
But
their
this is a
habitat.
generalized habitat.
Yeah, this isn't their head. But
I'm
it's,
thinking about the hawks and things like that.
there could have been hawks there. I didn't see any, but the day I was there, that doesn't mean they weren't there. I didn't see any. It's 2.6 acres that's going to be disturbed. I don't know if there's a threshold, but that's about the size at the barrier island site. On the plant site, it's probably closer to 10 acres. And that's not habitat, that's pretty much,
Jack,
that's why
you're big with the
water
Audubon.
Well,
Okay, what have you seen
One
over
year
there?
I helped with abandonment of Harriet down there. And in that specific site, I've never seen a nest like that. It's hard to get into. What we do is they nest in the summertime. We stand up on the shoulder of the road, and then when the hawk drops in,
You can tell.
I get the job. I get the job of going out with a flag, beating through the bush. And somebody stands on the road and says left or right, and then eventually we find the nest. And they usually nest in Phragmites. So
Yeah.
I don't imagine you can go plant back Phragmites after this thing.
Yeah, but one
It's
thing
like
Larry
I've
and I,
never seen them in this section. Never nesting in this
for
section.
whatever it's worth, Larry and I, having dealt with Phragmites quite a lot, we don't really see very much living in there. There's no food value.
Yeah, you would think.
I mean, there's
you'd
nesting and
think
that's
it's a
about it.
sterile environment, but the hawks nest in there.
Well, the hawks do, but the ducks aren't.
No.
The colonial water birds aren't going to nest in there, things like that.
So is there any need to consider a scheduling thing to the scenario you talked about with cut isn't going to be done, but part of the restriction was with cut, you have to do it during the dredging window
Yeah.
because of winter flounders and such. Do we do that on land and say,
My own gut
chill out
reaction is they
during?
don't nest in that section.
Okay.
They nest further east. But I'm not a biologist, and I was always working on the study 1 year. So you should probably get 1 year biology guys.
But DEC would.
This is DEC's call.
You just want to know that it's been looked at and
This is
supplied to
state
them.
park.
They'll-
And that's DEC's call. And they have that kind of information also to the extent they have it.
I mean, obviously, we still have to go through the DEC permitting process, and that's what I was gonna say. That would probably be considered as we go forward. Their various, sub-agencies will look to answer that very question, so.
Frankly, I see it as a relatively sterile area as well. Right along the road, there's nothing over there. It's frags to a great degree. I mean, I think a lot of us have probably driven the road.
You always get warblers passing through there.
Yeah, but they displace 100 yards, 200 yards. I mean, there's a marina right over there, for God's sake. They do move. It's not like they have permanent nesting sites, like ospreys
Yeah.
or something.
Somebody will do it before you.
Let's say you have to move it 100 feet this way or 100 feet that way.
Boy.
And that suddenly will,
Because we have
Well,
to
I
stay
think
within
if-
that easement.
If I can say, it's gotta be, when they did the original outfall, I believe they had to remove all shellfish and, species within the bay, a quarter mile on either side of the outfall. Certainly, 2 acres is a lot easier to recreate somewhere else and a lot less expensive. But that'll all be developed as the permitting process goes forward. In 30 years, it'll all be Frank Miners again, so.
Well, actually,
Go ahead.
I appreciate you looking at the staging area in relation to our comments, because often the staging area for projects, and I'm talking about highway projects, is not always carefully defined, and things happen that you don't want to happen. So it was good that you increased the staging area.
Thank you. Well, you guys kind of forced us to do it at this early stage, so.
And that's
you know,
why
that's our job.
I think
Yeah, you
that's
did your
what
job
we
right.
should, every project should be looked at carefully. I don't mean necessarily, I'm including you, but highway projects and the staging areas and your project should be carefully looked at.
In the discussion of the other alternatives and how some of them were ruled out, there were a couple of different places where you had to go through the logic of, well, if we were going to have to shut down the pipe for a while, we'd have to hold the volume on land or reach a different level of treatment, therefore aeration, denite, all kinds of things. Therefore, well, let's not do that. And so you got to the scenario that we have. In this scenario, I think there's just the possible shutdown for the moment when you go around it, I guess.
bypass.
Yeah,
And then you
the
go through it.
bypass,
So
yeah.
my question is, in the overall project, there's nothing being done at the plant to change the nitrogen levels in the effluent.
No.
Right? It remains whatever it was. And then,
Right. And at no point during this project is any effluent to be released to the bay.
right.
Okay.
Well, except if something with the shut off and cut over period happens, but that's a very small window that has to.
Yeah, no, but even still, let me go back to this one. I mean, what's gonna happen here, it's gonna be really disruptive. We're gonna open up on top here to the existing outfall, okay? And we're gonna kind of put a tap in
Yeah.
and a tap in and build kind of a bypass. And then you're gonna shut one down, shut the other down in the existing outfall pipe and have it go around. Okay? And then during that time frame, you're gonna be able to hook up. So there shouldn't be, the plan is to avoid any discharge to the bay. And then the last issue, this is just another one that kind of shows in the tail end of the tunnel boring machine, they're putting in the liner system. So they get to the point that the workers are never exposed to just, open earth. And the last issue was concerning the fate of the existing outfall pipe. And the plan right now is to leave that pipe, unless things change, is to leave that pipe in place as a backup should anything happen.
Any other questions? Any public comments? Sir, state your name, please.
This is perhaps late in the game. I'm Roger Collison. I just reviewed some of the alternatives. I know that they have been dismissed outright here. And this is concerning the possibility of putting the outfall discharge directly to the Great South Bay. That was dismissed outright. It was dismissed outright for a reason which I don't think is appropriate. They said that in the actual paper there that the no discharge zone precluded any discharge into the bay. That's not true. The EPA definition for a no discharge zone involves the discharge of effluent from boats and vessels only. Does not relate to the sewer plants. So if you would dismiss it outright, you can't see some of the potential benefits that could happen by releasing the discharge into the bay. And I guess my second point, throughout the description of the alternative 4, there were no potential benefits of discharging the groundwater that currently goes out, the groundwater, the treated effluent that currently goes out to the ocean that would be generated by discharging into the bay. About 4 years ago, the University of Rhode Island did a study in Narragansett Bay that has a very, very dense population of hard clams. And in the northern reaches of that bay, there are sewer plants that are problematic. They have too many nutrients in a very poorly flushed area. So the plan was simply to eliminate the effluent into Narragansett Bay. They could have done what we did in Great South Bay in 1975 and put the effluent directly to the ocean, bypassing the bay. But they looked at the possibility of denitrification. But before they did that, they went back and did a study to see how much the population of hard clams depended upon those sewer plants as effluents. Part of the effluent of a sewer plant is a fertilizer, nitrogen, the limiting nutrient for growth of primary growth in the bay. They found that 50% of the nitrogen in those clams came from those sewer plants. And the decision to denitrify the plant, or let's go back to 1975, this discussion was never even had. The discussion to go back and take the nitrogen that was the base of the food web for the tremendously productive hard clams of Great South Bay, there was never a discussion about whether that would impact that negatively. It was a big assumption. And the one thing you don't do in engineering is assume. You have to state your assumptions. So the assumption that the nutrients that are currently going to the outflow pipe that used to be in the bay, the assumption is that those nitrogens never contributed to the healthy production of shellfish, which many people are trying to get back. So I look at this as an opportunity. They are considering in Narragansett the potential to put up a denitrification plant which seasonally operates based on the needs of the shellfish they most value. We don't even consider that. This is completely off the table. But I want to make sure when we looked at that thing, it was dismissed, alternative 4, when it was dismissed because we couldn't do it because of a no discharge zone. That is not true. I mean, I'd like to do it. Maybe the groups that are involved with it decide that, but the EPA has no regulation concerning the discharge of, the EPA's definition of a no discharge zone does not apply to this particular project. I see this as an opportunity. I see maybe as a 50 or 100-year opportunity. The opportunity, if we want our shellfish to come back, we have to address the issues of whether or not we have enough food for them to survive. The limiting food that they have is going out in the pipe that goes 3 miles past the ocean. And that's going to get even worse, because as we go back and expand that watershed going into that area, we're going to get a net contribution from the groundwater, which is typically the primary source of the limiting nutrient. It's going to be greater and put out to the ocean. It may stimulate productivity in the ocean, which is some evidence to show. But if we were trying to get our clams, we have the county government here involved with it, trying to get the clams back, and we have this organization going back and deciding whether it's appropriate there's going to be environmental impacts. The impact, negative impact, was created in 1975. But this is an opportunity, since you're looking at the whole thing, to consider alternatives on how we may learn how to manage nutrients as opposed to condemn it. This is a whole other idea you've been exposed to, but I just want to be on the record to say, I first came up with this concept in 1995. Maybe you haven't heard it because people don't go back and usually start dealing with this issue because it's maybe more complicated than they want. But I think this is an opportunity before a particular alternative is chosen to go back and set aside a moment, to go back and to have engineers look at the science that's already out there. Because I believe what you're going to find is that scientists in many cases have these bits of information that are particularly pertinent to this problem. And when combined towards a goal of restoration of the bays in terms of its clams and productivity for finfish and everything else, the goal has to be considered of do they have enough to eat. And I think the answer is going to be no, they don't, because those tremendously high productivities we had back in 1975 before the Bergen plant was put in collapsed after it was put in. And that's 8,000 pounds of atomic nitrogen a day are going out that pipe right now. That used to be the base of the food web. It's a controversy which may be beyond the scope of this group, but I just want to make sure that you realize that the alternative should not be dismissed simply because of the no discharge zone. Doesn't apply here. And you should also look at that alternative 4 very carefully, because in every step of that alternative 4, every impact is considered to be negative. There is no discussion about the potential impacts. It gets even worse than that, because even on the speedies permit for the DEC, there's no provision for anything you do has a potential positive impact. This is an opportunity.
Thank you.
First off, sir, you should know that there's only one project before us at this point in time, this particular alternative. The Department of Public Works had 5 or 6 different options out there, and this is the one that they chose to present to us. So we're reacting only to one. We can't order nor ask the department to do something that they don't want to do. So in that legal sense, we have one option before us. They've already done a critical path analysis and chosen this. So that's what's before us right
So
now.
the Department of Public Works
They
decided upon it without environmental review.
No, this is the environmental review
Okay.
here right now.
But they
This
chose
is the
a project.
Sir,
I'm sorry.
don't argue, okay? They chose a path to go with. We're reviewing that path right now. You can't force them to do something that they don't want to do. Nonetheless, your concerns are part of the analysis, but you need to know how this comes before this particular board. So in that sense, saying that they haven't considered X and they haven't considered Y, this is what they're presenting to us at this point in time. Second off, your viewpoint on the nitrogen impacts is a decidedly minority view. Very bluntly, yeah, there are a lot of water bodies out there that suffer from nitrogen deficiency. The Mediterranean Ocean, for example, has a severe nitrogen deficiency, and that's why you don't have very many fish in that ocean, and that's been a historic fact. The Sea of Azov, for example, in Russia, has the same kinds of problems. They don't have adequate nutrients coming in. The science seems to indicate, and we could talk about this all over the place, but the bulk of the science seems to indicate that there's a heck of a lot of nitrogen in this system right now, flowing in through groundwater and surface sources and things like that, and that there's probably too much. And there's actually a school of thought saying with too many nitrogens, with too much nitrogen in there, we might have to, we may be faced with inadequate flushing, we should flush the bay out more. There's a lot of science saying and disagreeing with you, or saying that there's additional things, and saying that your particular aspect is not necessarily either decisive nor on the right track. So, that poses problems, if you will, for an analysis. There's a lot of stuff out there. For example, there was a school of thought when Little Pikes Inlet got created during the 1992 storm about putting a lock in and allowing high tide flushing, basically holding it back, allowing opening the lock up, allowing scouring to occur, and then creating basically another flushing aspect to it, because the Great South Bay is inadequately flushed. There's a lot of
As
concerns.
a minority point to that particular case, Dr. Scott Nixon from the University of Rhode Island was here at that point, and his conclusion, which was the minority finding, was that we did not, with the flushing, wash out the ground tide. We actually contributed nutrients from the ocean into the bay. That's not my saying, these are scientific papers. I'm not going back and expecting anybody to go back and come up with this, and I realize I'm in a minority position, but I have an obligation to state that position personally.
We have an obligation here to look at that stuff and understand what you're saying.
Okay, but I just want you to understand that specific to this thing, which is the first time, this engineering report, which was only available to the internet within 2 weeks to me, I guess. I was not aware that the alternatives were limited to one.
Again, that was an engineering decision, not an environmental decision.
Okay, all right, but I thought the engineering decision
No,
was
they did
based on
that before they
environmental.
get to us.
Well, I hope the engineering decision is based on environmental input, which is obviously it is, but apparently the decision has already been made.
No, we could pause deck this if we wanted to. There's no decision made. They're hitting us from an engineering standpoint of what their preferred project is. It goes from 200 million to $1 billion plus. Okay? I'm not looking at the numbers or anything. We're looking at the various impacts. This has been run by DEC. This has been run by the federal government. And again, your concerns are, to some degree, they've been taken into account. No one's not aware of what you're talking about.
I thought, no, it's never been addressed. Not in this report, and nowhere did they say there was
that's an
potential.
engineering report.
Well, okay, so I'm not going to take any more of your time. I just want to go back and make sure that you understood my position.
I'd like to ask some questions just to make sure I understand too. Thanks for bringing up this point. By clams, you mean like mercenary?
Yes, hard clam, well, actually all shellfish.
All shellfish?
All shellfish, yes. we've lost 98% of the shellfish in Great South Bay since
Yeah.
1970.
Yeah.
Now, I understand that some of the trends, but just want to make sure I understood which species you were saying bounce or would be a higher. In fact, it's true to the west of us in Jamaica Bay, one of the hottest areas to get huge Marcinaria is just outside the channel,
Sure.
just below JFK,
Sure.
which is just teeming with nitrogen. So they do live and thrive. And my company's involved with the Boston Harbor experience, where lobsters, for legal seafoods, fancy place that it is, were 2 miles from the dock until they close that outfall.
Sure.
Now the lobsters have to work a lot harder because the lobsters aren't there anymore. But I guess I wanted to just clarify, you're asserting that the benefit of extra nitrogen or additional nitrogen
Managed nitrogen.
to the Marcinaria would, on balance, be better for the ecosystem, or to those species?
I am saying that this outflow pipe, this opportunity right now, offers an opportunity to manage the nitrogen from the west that services that sewage area that goes into our bay, as opposed to eliminating it. What this plan does is continue the elimination of the nutrients. At one time with a base of 1/3 of the hardshell clams in the United States. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the DEC assumes that management is elimination. Most people assume that management is elimination. I just wanted to throw out the idea that management is not elimination. Management is balance. How much you can put in there, there's many studies which is required to show what's there, but we can't get it. It's much greater than your detail.
I guess that's where it's kind of an orthogonal discussion, because this whole thing exists because they knew that pipe was starting to fail. So we got to get that pipe, and there's 15-year scenarios to do it. So
But there's an
get the
opportunity
pipe
now
fixed.
to make it right. That's all I'm saying.
Your management scenario would be very much apart from the pipe discussion, because now we're back up on the plant, doing
Well,
D-night,
But
turning
it
on.
isn't. If
That's
we're
why
going to spend this amount of money right now to maintain the status quo, there will be less incentive to ever go back and to consider a change. That's why I brought it up at the table. So the $600 million alternative, which you dismissed outright because of two reasons, one of cost and one of which is, I don't think, a valid reason, not being able to perpet. It should really be balanced over how much of the 8,000 jobs that we lost because of this, if this could be pointed to this particular thing, how much is that worth? And all I was hoping today was that somehow we take a step back and look at the possibility, at that point in time, say, is the $400 million extra expense worth it, if that's what it is?
Another last comment for you, just a
Sure,
suggestion.
yes. Yeah.
November 15th, the Nassau legislature.
The Nassau legislature.
November 15th. Head up there at 1 to 4. We're going to present on this same line of thinking for Hempstead Bays.
Okay.
And it's the science phase of a discussion that some people are beating drums to get to an outfall. So in that community and discussion, it might be more of an opportunity to bend it in one way or the other. November 15th.
November 15th.
All right, thank you.
Those are my home waters. Okay, that's where I grew up, on Hempstead Bay. Okay, and I can tell you this much: the loss of shellfish from the 1960s on down has been tremendous. There's too much nitrogen in that system, and it's literally the clams have shrunk. The horseshoes don't come in. It's filthy water. Sometimes you can have too much nitrogen. But there's one other thing. You're just presenting one point. There's so much more science on this. The area has been overfished. The stock has lost, to many degrees, has lost the critical mass that's necessary to reproduce. So there's a lot more going on.
There's contention on that too. I mean, there was an issue prior to 2 years ago. The only definition of overfishing was made by an offhanded comment.
I'm not
from
talking
DEC.
overfishing. I'm talking about the
overharvesting.
critical mass to reproduce. Now, I had that happen to me in Stony Brook Harbor, which is my new waters, okay? And it got fished out, okay? Suffolk River got fished out. Literally, the populations were destroyed because everybody was over there and sucking them out of the water. And my point is, there are a number of issues that go on. If you're asking us to make a decision today based upon one aspect, forgetting about it,
I
no.
wasn't asking you to make a decision today. I was merely asking you to go back and to consider the fact that this may be a potential benefit. Now, what you do with that's up to you. I can't control that.
We're right now stuck in a reactive legal situation. We are dealing with a proposal by the county's Department of Public Works to deal with an existing pipe. That's the proposal that's before us. Okay, changing the entire setup. Even if you did an EIS and a massive study, that's millions of dollars and things like that. Are we cognizant of the issue? Yes. And as Tom is saying, yeah, there's studies going on right now in Hempstead Harbor. But we're kind of pinned in certain ways. I don't know that we can take your concerns fully into account and change an entire system.
I'm not asking you, this is
Southwest.
the environmental board, I thought. I thought this is the one reference to go back and bring in the position.
that's-
So,
Yes,
I have a comment
that
I
was
can do.
good. Thank you
Okay.
very much
Thank
for
you.
bringing that to us.
Mr. Chairman, I have a general follow-up question for us about that. And you've heard this from me a couple of times over the years. I often wonder about, Richard brought up, it says adverse impact. But as you've heard me say, impact, presence of an impact. I've never been able to get us to weigh in the beneficial impacts. That we seem to always be chasing and dodging adverse impacts, minimizing and mitigating them, which we need to, which we should do. But I frankly don't know if I'm aware of the places where structurally we're allowed to say, here's a benefit that we should help the project
We've done those
consider.
before. Aquaculture, for example.
On EAFs, we have it, when we're talking about certain issues.
I think that
we'll say
EAF
it will have a
modification was
positive
a place
impact.
where we could
Yes.
weigh it in a little bit more formally.
But also, we did, for an example, an EIS on the aquaculture program for the Conic Bay.
Yeah, that was
Okay, and
Well, that whole thing was based on positives,
yeah,
so
on
that was a
shellfish,
different
yes.
equation.
And it was bringing shellfish into the populations and trying to place them in areas where there would be growth depending upon the nutrients that were over there. So that's a positive. So it's not as if we haven't done it. Unfortunately, we're reactive
Yeah.
sometimes,
It
and
just
the
is-
projects
it's a challenge
we always
for
get
us.
hit with construction, if you will, as opposed to doing a 208 study where it's a positive because you can impact the environment. But for example, a lot of the sewer plants, if we can get away from pumping it just untreated into a body of water or whatever, that's a benefit. So we do a lot of that stuff. If we're getting it down from 20 mgs of nitrogen per liter, we're getting it into an STP and we're coming at it 5. That's a net benefit. I mean, we may not see it that way because it's construction.
Well, if that material was more than 10% sand, I would have suggested that it would be great if we could influence them to consider that as a beneficial use for restoration.
Listen,
But they wouldn't be compelled to do that.
No, that's means and methods and defraying, and that's cost factors. But yeah, I would say if it was pure sand, we need the sand on the South Shore beaches for overwash and
Well,
Smith
I'm not
Point,
going
things
to
like
trade
that.
out one or the other, but my basic point is to
By the way, before 1995, I believe it was, the regulations used to say any significant environmental impact. And that was interpreted by many, including the courts, to mean either good impacts or bad impacts. So if you took a project and there was going to be good impacts, you got caught in that trap of having to do an impact statement on something that, you didn't want to, That could have been written off much more easily in
a good idea.
an expanded,
So we need to make a motion on
Yes.
the form.
Is
Let's
there a
make a
motion?
motion. All right, I'll make a motion, type 1 negative declaration.
I'll second. Any other discussion? All in favor? I mean, did you pass? Okay. Motion passed.
Did you abstain?
abstain.
Rick abstained.
I want to abstain also.
And Mary Ann abstained. Okay, very quickly. Did we still have a?
Yeah, we're okay. I'll leave it.
Yeah,
about
recommended
10
type
minutes.
2 actions. There are ratification of recommendations, the legislative resolutions laid on the table. We have 2 packets, August 21st and September 13th. There's nothing outstanding in it that we really need to note about. Everything's pretty much pro forma.
You have the staff recommendations?
Yeah, motion to
Yes.
accept staff recs.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, all in favor? Motion passed. Other business, just a quick update on the environmental assessment forms. The state was supposed to create a guidebook for the long EAF form. It was supposed to be ready by October 1st. They have delayed it. They don't expect to finish it until April 1st, 2013.
April 1st.
But the guidebook for the short EAF is online. Right, so we still are not finalized with the long EAF, okay? Any other CAC concerns, Joy?
I have one thing I'll read brief. The conference on the environment is going to do a different format. I will send you an email about it, so you will receive it It's going to be October 10th. Starting with Bill McKibben at night speaking, and on Thursday, we're teaming with the Syracuse Center on Excellence. They do a symposium for years. They've done it. It is highly attended, and we're teaming with them. They're doing the Thursday 3 workshops, and we're doing Friday with a regular conference on the environment. So we hope to draw more people. It's $192 for their symposium. The hotel at the Crown Plaza for our group is $94 a night and meals. But I will send you, I'll check. I just wanted to have you aware that
Thank you,
this
Joyce.
is happening.
Anything else? Is there a motion?
Motion to go home.
Second. I'm not supposed to. Second. Motion passed. All right, meeting closed.